Supreme Commander Zekthar stood in the grand war room of the Vakrian flagship. His four eyes gleamed with pride as he watched the holographic display. It showed recordings of 164 conquered worlds. Each victory was perfect. Each enemy was crushed. The war room was massive. Crystal walls reflected the light of 1,000 stars. Officers stood at attention around the circular chamber. They wore armor decorated with medals from countless battles. Everyone present had witnessed the unstoppable rise of the Vakrian Empire. Zekthar pressed a button. The hologram changed to show their latest conquest. The Draxian Confederation had been their 164th victim. The Draxians were known throughout the galaxy as master strategists. Their military academies were legendary. Their fleet commanders had written books on warfare that other species studied for generations. The Vakrians destroyed them in 6 hours. Magnificent, Zekthar said. His voice echoed through the chamber. The Draxians believed they were clever. They thought their tactics would save them. But we crushed them like all the others.
Hey!
His officers nodded in agreement. Sub-Commander Vareth stepped forward. She was Zekthar's most trusted officer. Her scales were marked with scars from 100 battles. Supreme Commander, the Council sends another message, Vareth said. She held up a data tablet. They request we attend a diplomatic meeting before proceeding with our next target. Schvector laughed. The sound was harsh and cold. The Galactic Council. They always send requests. They always ask us to stop. But they never do anything to enforce their wishes. The Council had been established thousands of years ago. It was meant to prevent wars and promote peace. But the Council had no army. It had no real power. It could only make suggestions and hope species would listen. The Vakrians never listened. What do they want this time? Zekthar asked. Vareth scrolled through the message. They warn us against approaching a system called Sol. They say the inhabitants are dangerous. They call them unpredictable. The other officers in the room began to laugh. The sound filled the chamber like thunder. Dangerous? One officer said between laughs. We have conquered the Draxians, the Korthon Armada, and the Synthetic Collective. What can possibly be dangerous to us now? Zekthar raised his hand. The laughter stopped immediately. He took the tablet from Vareth and read the message himself. His eyes narrowed as he processed the information. Earth, he said slowly. The third planet in the Sol system, inhabited by a species that calls themselves humans. He pulled up Earth's data file. The hologram shifted to show a blue and green world. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Zekthar studied the information about human civilization. They are barely space-capable, he observed. Their fastest ships cannot even reach half the speed of light. Their weapons technology is centuries behind galactic standards. They have only recently established colonies on their own moon and neighboring planet. Vareth looked at the data. Then why does the Council warn us? Fear, Zekthar said, with certainty. The Council fears our power. They send warnings about every target we choose. They hope to slow us down with caution and doubt. He turned to face his officers. But we are Vakrians. We do not know caution. We do not know doubt. We know only victory. The officers struck their chests in salute. The sound boomed through the chamber. Besides, Zekthar continued, look at their military records. The humans fight among themselves constantly. Their world is divided into hundreds of separate nations. They waste resources on internal conflicts while we unite entire galaxies under one banner. Another officer spoke up. Supreme Commander, the database shows humans have only fought wars on their own planet. They have never engaged in space combat. They have no experience with real warfare. This brought another round of laughter from the assembled commanders. Zekthar studied Earth's image more carefully. What does the Council specifically say about these humans? Vareth read from the message. They describe humans as unpredictable. They say humans are dangerous when cornered. The Council recommends we avoid the Sol system entirely. Dangerous when cornered, Zekthar repeated mockingly. Every species says this about themselves. Every civilization claims they will fight fiercely if threatened. But when our fleet arrives, They all surrender the same way. They all beg for mercy. He closed the data file with a wave of his hand. We will not avoid Earth. We will make it our 165th conquest. Let the Council watch as we prove once again that nothing can stop the Vacrian Empire. Eskthor called for a full War Council meeting. Within hours, all the High Commanders gathered in the war room. They reviewed Earth's defenses. They analyzed human technology. They planned their attack strategy. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be conquered. Prepare the fleet, Eskthor commanded. We will bring 500 warships. More than enough to overwhelm any resistance these humans might offer. Is that not excessive, Supreme Commander? Asked one younger officer. We conquered the Draxians with only 200 ships. Eskthor smiled. It was not a kind expression. We bring 500 ships to send a message. Not just to Earth, but to the entire galaxy. We want everyone to see that we can spare such a massive force for a primitive world. Let them understand that nothing is beyond our reach. The preparations took 3 days. The fleet assembled in orbit around the Vacrian homeworld. 500 warships. Each one was 5 kilometers long. Each carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. Together, they represented the most powerful military force ever gathered. Eskthor stood on the bridge of his flagship as the fleet prepared to depart. He looked out at the assembled armada. Pride filled his chest. Set course for the Sol system, he ordered. Let us add Earth to our collection of victories. Let us show the galaxy that the Vacrian Empire cannot be stopped. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. They traveled toward Earth with absolute confidence. Not one commander aboard those ships believed they could fail. They had won 164 times before. They had no reason to believe the 165th time would be any different. Behind them, the Galactic Council received confirmation of the fleet's departure. In the council chambers, representatives from 1,000 worlds fell silent. Some felt pity for Earth. Others felt relief that the Vacrians were not coming for them. But a few old species, races that had existed long before the council, felt something different. They felt worry. Not for Earth. For the Vacrians. Part 2. Earth silenced. The Vacrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 500 warships appeared like a swarm of metal predators. Their arrival sent ripples through the fabric of space itself. Supreme Commander Eskthor watched the view screen as the local star came into focus. Sol was a yellow dwarf star, unremarkable in every way. Yet somewhere in this system lived the species the Council had warned him about. Begin long-range scans, Eskthor ordered. I want to know everything about their defenses. The scanning officer worked quickly. Data began flowing across multiple displays. Supreme Commander, I detect 9 planets, several asteroid belts, numerous moons. The third planet from the star is Earth. Is there military presence? Eskthor asked, scanning now. The officer's face showed confusion. Sir, I detect only minimal defensive satellites around Earth, a few space stations in orbit, some mining operations in the asteroid belt. Nothing that suggests a significant military force. Eskthor leaned back in his command chair. This was even easier than he expected. Perhaps the Council's warning was about nothing after all. Sub-Commander Verith stood beside him. She studied the scan results with careful attention. It seems strange, Supreme Commander. Why would the Council warn us if there is no threat? The Council fears our expansion, Eskthor replied. They will say anything to slow us down. He signaled to the communications officer. Broadcast our standard surrender demand. All frequencies. Make sure every human hears it. The communications officer activated the fleet's transmitters. The message went out in hundreds of languages, translated by advanced AI systems. People of Earth, this is the Vacrian Empire. Your system is now under our control. You will surrender immediately. Disarm all military forces. Prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in total destruction. You have 6 hours to comply. The message repeated over and over. It echoed through space, reaching every corner of the Sol system. Then silence. Zekthar waited for the usual response. Normally, targeted species would immediately flood all channels with messages. Some would beg for mercy. Others would try to negotiate. Some would threaten and bluster. But they all responded. Earth said nothing. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The communications officer checked his equipment repeatedly. Sir, our transmission is reaching them. I confirm they are receiving the message, but there is no response. Perhaps their translation systems are primitive, suggested one officer. They might not understand what we are saying. Zekthar frowned. Send the message again. This time in their primary languages only. Make it simple. The message was sent again. Still, Earth remained silent. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched. Long-range sensor arrays from a dozen species monitored the Sol system. The Galactic Council had sent observation ships to witness what would happen. They maintained a safe distance, several light-years away in the council chambers. Representatives gathered around holographic displays. They watched the Vakrian fleet hold position at the system's edge. The humans are not responding, said Ambassador Kelrick of the Thandarian Union. His tentacles twisted with nervousness. This is unusual behavior. Perhaps they are simply terrified, suggested another ambassador. Fear can make species freeze like prey animals. But Ambassador Yulmora, one of the oldest beings in the council, shook her ancient head. No, this is something else. The humans are thinking, planning. They are not afraid. They are deciding. Back in the Sol system, Zekthar's patience was wearing thin. Advance the fleet. Take us to their moon. Let them see our power up close. The massive fleet began moving deeper into the system. They passed the orbit of Neptune, then Uranus. Saturn came into view, its rings beautiful and vast. The scanning officer suddenly looked up. Supreme Commander, I am detecting unusual readings near Jupiter. What kind of readings? Zekthar demanded. I'm not certain. The sensors show brief energy spikes. But when I focus on the location, there is nothing there. Cosmic radiation, Zekthar said dismissively. This is an active star system. Such readings are normal. But then more reports came in. Strange readings near Mars. Unexplained energy signatures in the asteroid belt. Brief glimpses of something on sensors that disappeared when examined closely. Vareth studied the data carefully. Supreme Commander, perhaps we should proceed with caution. These readings are consistent with cloaked vessels. Possible, Zekthar replied. The scans show their technology is primitive. They do not have cloaking capabilities. These are natural phenomena. Nothing more. The fleet continued its advance. Earth was now visible on the view screen. The blue and green world looked peaceful, defenseless. Zekthar could see the lights of cities on the night side of the planet. Millions of humans going about their lives, unaware that their world was about to be conquered. Or were they aware? The communications officer suddenly received a transmission. Supreme Commander, we are receiving a message from Earth. Finally, Zekthar thought. Now the begging would begin. Put it through. Human appeared on the view screen. The figure wore a simple uniform with no decorations. The human's face was calm. To calm, this is Earth Defense Command, the human said. The voice was level and emotionless. You have entered our system without permission. You have broadcast threats against our world. You have 6 hours to leave the Sol system and never return. This is your only warning. Then the transmission ended. Zekthar stared at the blank screen in disbelief. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Then Zekthar began to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into full laughter. His officers joined in, though some sounded uncertain. Did you hear that? Zekthar said between laughs. They gave us a warning. These primitives, with their handful of satellites and mining stations, gave us a warning. They are insane, said one officer. They must be insane to speak to us this way. Barath did not laugh. She watched the view screen where Earth still rotated peacefully. Something felt wrong. Everything about this situation felt wrong. Supreme Commander, she said quietly, perhaps we should consider their warning. The Council advised us to avoid this system. The humans show no fear. These are unusual circumstances. Skether's laughter stopped. He turned to face Vareth. Are you suggesting we retreat? We who have conquered 164 worlds should flee from one primitive planet. I am suggesting caution, Supreme Commander. Caution is for the weak, Zekthar said firmly. He turned back to his crew. All ships to battle formation. Prepare weapons. We will show these humans the price of insolence. The fleet shifted formation. The warships spread out in an attack pattern that had proven effective on 100 worlds. Each ship charged its weapons. Targeting systems locked onto Earth's cities and military installations. Take us past Mars, Zekthar commanded. Once we cross into their inner system, we will demonstrate our power. A few destroyed cities will make them more cooperative. The fleet accelerated. Mars grew larger on the view screen. The red planet marked the boundary of Earth's inner system. As the first Vakrian ships crossed the orbit of Mars, every alarm on every vessel suddenly screamed to life. The scanning officer's voice was filled with panic. Supreme Commander. Contact. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of ships appearing on sensors. What? Zekthar jumped from his chair. Where did they come from? They were cloaked, sir. They were waiting for us. The view screen filled with new images. Ships emerged from seemingly empty space. They appeared from behind asteroids. They rose from behind Mars itself. They uncloaked near the moons of Jupiter. But these were not the primitive vessels Zekthar expected. These ships were sleek and deadly. They moved with impossible speed and grace. Sir, I am reading weapon signatures unlike anything in our database, the tactical officer reported. These are not standard galactic technologies. Zekthar gripped his command chair. How many ships? Counting, sir? At least 2,000 vessels. No, wait, more are appearing. 3,000. 4,000. Sir, they keep coming. Vareth's voice was barely a whisper. They were waiting for us. All this time, they were waiting. On Earth, in a command center buried deep beneath a mountain, Admiral Sarah Chen watched her tactical display. Green dots representing human ships surrounded the red dots of the Vakrian fleet. Ma'am, the Vakrians have crossed the Mars threshold, reported a young officer. Admiral Chen nodded. She had gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent 15 years preparing for this day. 15 years since the first contact with the Galactic Council. 15 years of building, planning, and waiting. All ships, she said calmly into her communicator. This is Admiral Chen. Execute Protocol Homecoming. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth in space. The human fleet received its orders. The trap was sprung. Part 3, The Vanishing Supreme. Commander Zekthar watched his tactical display in horror. Red warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. The comfortable arrogance that had defined his entire career vanished in seconds. Contact lost with the Vanguard. The communications officer shouted, All 100 ships in the forward group are gone. Gone? Zekthar demanded. What do you mean gone? I mean, they are not there anymore, sir. Their signals just stopped. No distress calls. No explosion signatures. They simply disappeared. This was impossible. The Vanguard consisted of their newest warships. Each was equipped with shields strong enough to withstand nuclear weapons. Each carried enough firepower to level a continent. They could not just disappear. Get them back on communications, Zekthar ordered. Now the communications officer worked frantically. I am trying, sir. But there is nothing. Not even static. It is like they never existed. Sub-Commander Varath stared at her own display. Supreme Commander, the sensor readings are becoming unstable. I cannot get accurate information about anything in this system. It is like something is jamming us. It's impossible, Zekthar said, but his voice lacked confidence. Our sensor technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. A new voice spoke from behind them. It came from the secondary science station. Perhaps not the most advanced, Supreme Commander. Everyone turned to look at the science officer. He was young, barely experienced. His name was Torvin, and he had only joined the fleet 3 months ago. Explain yourself, Zekthar said coldly. Torvin pointed to his display. Sir, I have been analyzing the energy signatures from those human ships. They are unlike anything in our database. But I recognize the underlying principles. They are based on quantum field manipulation. Speak plainly, Vareth demanded. The humans are not using technology similar to ours, Torvin continued. They have developed completely different methods. Our sensors cannot track them properly, because we are looking for the wrong signatures. Zichther felt cold fear creeping into his chest. How is this possible? The scans showed they were primitive. The scans showed us what the humans wanted us to see, Torvin said quietly. I believe everything we detected was deliberate misdirection. The primitive satellites. The basic space stations. All of it was meant to make us underestimate them. On Earth, Admiral Chen smiled grimly as she watched the Vakrian fleet's formation begin to break apart. Years of planning were finally paying off. Ma'am, the Vakrians are trying to regroup, reported her tactical officer. Let them, Chen replied. They need to understand the situation they are in. Lieutenant Kim, begin Phase 2. Yes, ma'am. Activating hidden platforms now? Throughout the Sol system, thousands of objects began to change. Asteroids that had drifted in the belt for years suddenly split open. Defense platforms emerged, their weapons charging. They had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as rocks and ice. Several of Jupiter's smaller moons were not moons at all. They were massive weapons platforms built over a decade. Now they came to life, their targeting systems locking onto the Vakrian fleet. On Mars. Beneath the red sand, entire military bases powered up. Railgun batteries rose from hidden silos. Missile launchers emerged from artificial craters. Even Earth's moon revealed its secrets. The dark side, which the Vakrians had barely scanned, was covered with military installations. Shipyards that had constructed the human fleet. Training facilities where pilots had prepared for this day. Weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. The Sol system was not just defended, it was a fortress. Every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid had been turned into part of a vast defensive network. And at the center of it all was Earth. The world that had spent 15 years preparing for invasion. Back on the Vakrian flagship, Zichther finally understood the truth. We walked into a trap. Yes, Supreme Commander, Vareth said. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook. The question is, can we escape it? Zichther straightened his back. He was still a Vakrian commander. He had won 164 battles. He would not panic. All ships, battle formation Delta. Concentrate fire on the nearest human vessels. We break through their lines and retreat to hyperspace. The Vakrian fleet responded with practiced efficiency. Despite their fear, they were trained warriors. They formed up and began their counterattack. Massive energy beams lanced out from the Vakrian warships. They targeted the human vessels with weapons that could slice through mountains. Missiles streaked across space, each carrying enough explosive power to destroy a city, but the human ships were fast. Impossibly fast. They dodged and weaved through the incoming fire like dancers. Their movements seemed to predict where the Vakrians would shoot before the Vakrians themselves knew. They are too quick, the weapons officer reported. I cannot get a lock. They move before my targeting computer can calculate their position. Then the humans fired back. The weapons were unlike anything the Vakrians had seen. Some fired beams of coherent particles that punched through Vakrian shields as if they were not there. Others launched projectiles that accelerated to incredible speeds, striking with the force of meteors. But the most terrifying weapons were the ones that seemed to bend space itself. They created fields that crushed Vakrian ships like tin cans. Or they opened brief rifts that swallowed vessels whole, sending them to unknown destinations. Shields failing on multiple ships. The tactical officer called out, "The Crimson Blade has been destroyed. The Iron Fist is reporting catastrophic damage. The Deathwind is venting atmosphere." Zichther watched his fleet being torn apart. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by enemies they could barely track. This was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Why are our weapons ineffective? He demanded. Torvin spoke up again from his science station. Sir, I believe I know why. Our weapons and defenses are based on standard galactic technology. Everyone in the known galaxy uses similar principles. The humans have access to different knowledge. What knowledge? Vareth asked. The knowledge of the 164 species we conquered, Torvin said. His voice was filled with realization. Every civilization we destroyed, every species we enslaved, they all knew about standard galactic technology. They knew its weaknesses. They would have shared that information with anyone who would listen. Zixar felt his blood turn to ice. You are saying the humans know how to counter our weapons because our victims told them? Not just told them, sir. I believe they helped them. For 15 years, while we were conquering the galaxy, Earth was making alliances with our enemies. They were gathering information, learning our weaknesses, building weapons specifically designed to kill us. Vareth turned to Zixar. The Council tried to warn us. They knew Earth had been preparing. Full retreat, Zixar ordered. His pride was gone, replaced by pure survival instinct. All ships disengage and return to hyperspace entry point. The Vakrian fleet turned and ran. 400 ships, all that remained from the original 500, fled back the way they had come. They abandoned formation, abandoned strategy. They only wanted to escape. But as they approached the outer system, the navigation officer's face went pale. Supreme Commander, we have a problem. What now? Zixar asked, though he feared the answer. The hyperspace lanes, sir. They are collapsing. Someone is using massive gravitational fields to destabilize them. Vareth checked her own readings. He is correct. The humans have deployed some kind of gravity well generators throughout the system. We cannot enter hyperspace. We are trapped. Zixar sat down slowly in his command chair. For the first time in his career, he felt true fear. Send a surrender signal. Perhaps they will show mercy. The communications officer tried. Sir, I cannot get a signal through. There is too much interference. Then broadcast on all frequencies, Zixar ordered desperately. Tell them we surrender. Tell them we will leave and never return. Tell them anything they want to hear. For several minutes, the communications officer broadcast surrender messages in every language the Vakrians knew. The fleet stopped fleeing and held position, hoping for a response. Finally, a transmission came through. It was the same human from before. Admiral Chen, you had your chance to leave, she said. Her voice was cold as ice. You were warned. Now, you face the consequences. Please, Zixar said, and he hated himself for begging. We surrender. We will leave your system. We will tell the galaxy that Earth is forbidden territory. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. You misunderstand the situation, Commander. You are not here to conquer. You are here to learn. Let me teach you what happens when you threaten humanity. The transmission ended. Zixar turned to his officers. He saw fear in every face. These were warriors who had never known defeat. Now they were trapped in a system light years from home, surrounded by an enemy they could not fight. What do we do? Whispered one young officer. Zixar had no answer. Part 4. No, escape the Vakrian fleet. Hung motionless in space, like a wounded animal. 400 warships remained from the original 500, and that number was dropping every minute. Not from direct attacks, but from systems failures and collateral damage accumulated during the brief battle. Supreme. Commander Zixar stared at his tactical display. Red dots represented his fleet. They were completely surrounded by green dots. Thousands of green dots. The human ships had them trapped in a sphere of death. Status report, Zixar demanded, trying to maintain some sense of command. Sub-Commander Vareth read from her display. We have lost 47 ships in the past hour. Not from attacks. From radiation exposure. Sir, the humans have positioned their forces in a way that funnels solar radiation at us. Our shields must stay active just to protect against the star's energy. But shields require power. Ships are running low on fuel. What about life support? Zixar asked. Most ships can maintain life support for 3 to 4 weeks, Vareth replied. But without shield power, we are vulnerable. The humans are forcing us to choose between shields and survival systems. It was brilliant and cruel. The humans were not wasting ammunition. They were letting physics and time kill the Vakrian fleet. Zector had used similar tactics on weaker species. Now he was the victim. Can we risk lowering shields to conserve power? Asked one officer. Torvin, the young science officer, answered. No, sir. The moment our shields drop, we become easy targets. I detect human weapons platforms positioned throughout this region. They are waiting for us to make that exact choice. Zicther felt the weight of his decisions crushing down on him. He had brought his fleet into this system with absolute confidence. Now they were trapped, running out of options and time. What about ramming attacks? Suggested the weapons officer. We could select a target and use our ships as missiles. At least we would take some of them with us. Before Zector could respond, the view screen activated. Admiral Chen appeared again. Behind her, Zector could see a command center full of humans working at various stations. They looked calm, professional, completely in control. Commander Zector, Admiral Chen said, I am giving you one opportunity. Power down your weapons and shields. Surrender completely. Your crews will be treated as prisoners of war under human conventions. Zector stood tall. Even facing death, he was Vakrian. And if we refuse, then I will demonstrate what human weapons can truly do, Chen replied. You have seen our defensive capabilities. You have not yet seen our offensive ones. I promise you, Commander, you do not want to find out what we built specifically to kill your kind. The transmission ended. Vareth turned to Zicther. Perhaps we should consider her offer. Never, Zicther said firmly. We are Vakrians. We do not surrender to primitives. They're not primitives, Torvin said quietly. That has been made very clear. Zector glared at the young officer. Silence. I will not hear defeatist talk on my bridge. But even as he spoke, Zector knew the truth. They had underestimated Earth catastrophically. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. The humans were not victims waiting to be conquered. They were predators who had been waiting for prey foolish enough to enter their territory. Hours passed. The Vakrian fleet continued to drift, surrounded by human forces. Several ships attempted to break through the encirclement. They were destroyed so quickly that sensors barely registered what happened. The human ships moved with coordinated precision like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Each vessel knew exactly where every other vessel would be. On the bridge of his flagship, Zicther received reports of increasing desperation from his fleet. Medical bays were filling with injured crew members. Food supplies were running low on some vessels. The psychological stress of being trapped was breaking down discipline. Sir, the communications officer reported, 3 captains are requesting permission to negotiate separate surrenders with the humans. Denied, Zicther said immediately. We stand together. If we surrender as a fleet. But he knew that unity was fracturing. Fear was spreading through his armada like poison. Then something changed. The human fleet began moving. Not attacking, but repositioning. They shifted formation, creating lanes between their ships. What are they doing? Vareth wondered aloud. Torvin studied his sensors. They are creating corridors through their formation. They are giving us a path. A path to where? Zicther asked. To Earth, sir. They are opening a route directly to their homeworld. This made no sense. Why would the humans give them access to Earth? It had to be a trap. But what kind of trap? Admiral Chen appeared on the view screen again. Commander Zecthar, you seem to be indecisive. Let me help you make a choice. I am opening a passage to Earth. You wanted to conquer our world? So come, try. Zecthar felt rage building inside him. She was mocking him, taunting him, inviting him to attack just so she could demonstrate how completely outmatched he was. It is suicide, Vareth said. She is baiting us. I know, Zecthar replied. But look at our fleet. We are dead already. Running low on supplies. Shields failing. Morale collapsing. We can die here slowly, or we can die fighting. There's a third option, Vareth said. We can surrender. As Vector looked at his second-in-command. Vareth had served with him for 20 years. She had been beside him through countless battles. Now he saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Wisdom? You think we should surrender? Ziegther asked. I think we should survive, Vareth replied, so we can warn others, so that no more Vakrian fleets make our mistake. Someone must live to tell the tale of what happened here. Ziegther considered this. His pride screamed at him to fight, to die as a warrior rather than live as a prisoner. But Vareth was right. If they all died here, the Vakrian Empire would just send another fleet, and another, until Earth destroyed them all. Before Ziegther could make his decision, alarms blared across the bridge. Contact! The tactical officer shouted. New ships entering the system. Vakrian signatures. It is a rescue fleet. Hope surged through the bridge. Ziegther pulled up the sensor data. It was true. 50 Vakrian warships had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. The Empire had sent reinforcements. They must have detected our distress signals before the humans jammed our communications, Vareth said. On the view screen, they watched as the rescue fleet moved toward their position. Fresh ships, full weapons, charged shields. Perhaps they could fight their way out after all. But Admiral Chen's expression on the view screen did not change. She did not look worried. She looked almost sad. Commander, she said quietly. Call them back, please, before it is too late. Ziegther felt a chill. Why would she give him that warning? What did she know? Contact the rescue fleet, Ziegther ordered. Tell them to hold position. But the communications officer shook his head. I cannot reach them, sir. Too much interference. They watched helplessly as the rescue fleet crossed into the inner system. They passed Neptune, then Uranus. They were following the same path Ziegther's fleet had taken. Then they crossed the orbit of Mars. Every human ship in the system suddenly activated. Not just the ones surrounding Ziegther's fleet, all of them. Thousands of vessels that had been holding back, conserving power, waiting. The rescue fleet never had a chance. The human attack was overwhelming. It was precise. It was merciless. Within minutes, all 50 rescue ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans had been holding back. They had shown Ziegther only a fraction of their true power. Now he saw the full might of Earth's military. On the bridge of the flagship, every officer stood in stunned silence. They had just watched 50 ships destroyed in minutes. Ships that were supposed to save them were now debris floating in space. Ziegther sat down slowly. He finally understood. The humans were not just defending their world. They were making a statement. They were showing the galaxy what would happen to anyone who threatened Earth. Send the surrender signal, Ziegther said quietly. Tell Admiral Chen we submit completely. All ships, all crews, we are hers. This time, the humans allowed the signal through. Part 5. The message 6 months after the Vakrian fleet entered the Sol system. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 1,247 civilizations gathered in the great chamber that floated in neutral space. The mood was tense, fearful, uncertain. Ambassador Kelrick of the Thandarian Union rose to speak. His tentacles moved in agitated patterns, betraying his nervousness. We must address the situation. The Vakrian fleet has not returned. The rescue force has not returned. 51 probes sent to investigate the Sol system have not returned. Something has happened. Something terrible. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. For 6 months, the Council had tried to learn the fate of the Vakrian Armada. Every attempt to contact them had failed. Every probe sent to Sol vanished without sending data back. It was as if the entire system had become a black hole, swallowing everything that entered. Ambassador Yulmora, ancient and wise, spoke in her slow, measured voice. We warned the Vakrians not to approach Earth. They did not listen. Now we must consider the possibility that humanity destroyed them. Impossible, declared Ambassador Kresh of the Korthon Armada. His species had been the Vakrians' 97th conquest. 500 Vakrian warships could destroy entire solar systems. No single world could defeat such a force. Not without leaving evidence. Our long-range sensors detect no debris field. No radiation signatures from massive battles. Nothing. It is as if the fleet simply vanished. Perhaps they did vanish, suggested another ambassador. Perhaps something in that system destroyed them completely. A natural phenomenon we do not understand. Or an unnatural one, Yulmora said quietly. The debate continued for hours. Some believed the Vakrians had been destroyed. Others thought they had been captured. A few suggested the entire fleet had somehow been transported to another dimension. But no one could agree on what actually happened. Then the transmission arrived. It came on every frequency simultaneously. Every communication system in the galaxy received it at the same moment. The signal was so powerful, so precisely calibrated, that it overrode every other transmission in known space. The council chamber's holographic display activated. Every ambassador turned to watch. A human appeared. It was Admiral Sarah Chen. She wore her military uniform, her gray hair tied back, her expression serious but not hostile. Behind her, Earth rotated slowly in space, blue and green and beautiful. "Greetings, Galactic Council," Admiral Chen began. "This message is being broadcast to every civilized world in the galaxy. We want everyone to hear what we have to say. 6 months ago, the Vakrian Empire sent a fleet of 550 warships to conquer Earth. They came without provocation. They came with threats of violence. They came believing we were primitive and defenseless." The image shifted to show space near Mars. The council representatives watched as the Vakrian fleet appeared on sensors. They saw the human forces emerge from hiding. They witnessed the brief, brutal battle that followed. "The Vakrian fleet no longer exists," Admiral Chen continued. "Neither does the rescue force they sent. We gave them opportunities to leave peacefully. We gave them chances to surrender. They chose violence. They chose to threaten our world and our people. So we showed them what happens when humanity is threatened." The image changed again. This time it showed coordinates. System locations throughout the galaxy. The ambassadors recognized them immediately. These were the 164 worlds the Vakrians had conquered. "For 15 years, Admiral Chen said, we have been contacted by the survivors of Vakrian aggression. Species they enslaved. Worlds they destroyed. Refugees who escaped their occupation. They came to us seeking help. They shared their knowledge. They told us about galactic technology and its weaknesses. They helped us prepare for the day the Vakrians would come for us." Ambassador Kresh leaned forward intently. His people had been among those who fled to human space. He had wondered what became of them. In return for their help, Admiral Chen continued, "We made them a promise. We promised that when we defeated the Vakrians, we would help rebuild what was destroyed. We would help restore what was taken. For the past 6 months, human ships have been traveling to all 164 conquered worlds. We are providing resources, technology, and assistance. We are helping displaced populations return home. We are keeping our promise." The image showed human ships arriving at various alien worlds. They carried supplies, construction materials, and medical aid. Human engineers worked alongside alien crews to rebuild cities. Human doctors treated wounded refugees. Human teachers helped educate children who had grown up under Vakrian occupation in the council chamber. Tears fell from many eyes. Not all species cried the same way, but every representative understood what they were seeing. Earth was not just defending itself. It was liberating the oppressed. Admiral Chen's face returned to the screen. The Vakrian Empire built its power on conquest and slavery. They believed strength came from domination. They were wrong. Real strength comes from cooperation. From helping those who cannot help themselves. From standing up to bullies even when it would be easier to hide. The image shifted one final time. It showed something that made several ambassadors gasp in horror. It was footage from inside the Vakrian fleet during the battle. The council watched as human weapons tore through. Vakrian shields. They saw the terror on Vakrian faces as their ships were destroyed. They witnessed the final moments of the fleet. But the most disturbing part was what happened next. The video showed human ships, using weapons unlike anything seen before. They were not conventional energy beams or missiles. They were devices that seemed to unmake matter itself. Ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist. Atoms were separated. Molecules were dissolved. Everything was broken down to its component parts and scattered. We developed these weapons specifically for this purpose, Admiral Chen explained. We call them molecular disintegration fields. They leave no debris, no wreckage, no evidence. The Vakrian fleet was not just destroyed, it was erased. Every atom of every ship was dispersed across the solar system. The same fate befell their rescue force. The council representatives sat in shocked silence. The implications were staggering. Earth possessed weapons that could completely eliminate fleets without trace. Weapons that violated every principle of known physics. "Why are you showing us this?" Ambassador Kelrick finally asked, though he knew the transmission was not interactive. As if answering his question, Admiral Chen spoke. "We are showing you this for one reason, so you understand. Earth is not conquering. Earth is not expanding. Earth is not threatening. But Earth is also not defenseless. We will not bother anyone who leaves us in peace. But we will not allow anyone to threaten our world or our people." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Consider this humanity's introduction to the galaxy. We are willing to be friends. We are willing to trade. We are willing to help rebuild what the Vakrians destroyed. But we are also willing to defend ourselves with every means at our disposal. Choose wisely how you approach us." The transmission ended. For several long minutes, no one in the council chamber spoke. They processed what they had learned. Vakrians who had seemed unstoppable had been erased. Earth, which had seemed primitive, had been preparing for war for 15 years. Humanity, which had been quiet, now spoke with absolute authority. Finally, Ambassador Yulmora broke the silence. "I propose we send an official diplomatic delegation to Earth, not as warriors, as friends. We should welcome humanity properly into the galactic community." The vote was unanimous. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in her command center and watched the galaxy's response to her broadcast. Messages were already arriving from hundreds of worlds. Some were grateful. The species Earth had helped, wanted to thank them. Some were fearful. The strong civilizations worried about this new power. Some were curious. They wanted to learn more about humanity. But all of them were respectful. A young officer approached Admiral Chen. "Ma'am, we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They request permission to send ambassadors to Earth." "Granted," Chen replied. "It is time we stopped hiding." She walked to the window of the command center. Outside, she could see Earth below, cities full of people going about their lives. Oceans covering most of the planet, clouds drifting across continents. It looked peaceful from here, beautiful, fragile. But Admiral Chen knew the truth. Earth was anything but fragile. 15 years ago, when the first refugees from Vakrian aggression had arrived in human space, Earth had made a choice. They could hide and hope the Vakrians never found them, or they could prepare. They could build weapons. They could train soldiers. They could turn their entire solar system into a fortress. They chose to prepare. They studied every species the Vakrians had conquered. They learned about galactic technology. They identified its weaknesses. Then they developed weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. Weapons the Vakrians had never encountered. Weapons that did not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The Vakrians thought they were facing primitives. They were actually facing an enemy that knew exactly how to kill them. Admiral Chen thought about Supreme Commander Zeekther. The Vakrian commander had surrendered his fleet and survived. His remaining crews were now prisoners on a human-controlled station near Jupiter. They were treated well according to human standards for prisoners of war. They had food, shelter, medical care, and even limited recreation. But they also had to watch as Earth helped rebuild the worlds the Vakrians had destroyed. They had to. See their former victims being saved by the species they had tried to conquer. It was perhaps the cruelest punishment Chen could devise. Not death, not torture, but knowledge. The knowledge that they had lost to beings they considered inferior. A technician called out from across the command center. "Admiral, we are detecting several ships entering the outer solar system. They are broadcasting Galactic Council identification codes. The diplomatic delegation has arrived. Direct them to Earth, Chen ordered. It is time we made some new friends. She smiled slightly. Earth had been quiet for so long, hiding, preparing, waiting. Now the wait was over. Humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors, not as victims. As equals in the deep archives of the Military Command Center, a file was created and sealed. It contained complete records of the battle in the Sol system. The file was labeled with a simple designation, the 164th lesson. It was a reference to the 164 civilizations the Vakrians had conquered, the ones who had helped Earth prepare, the ones who had shared their knowledge and their pain. Earth had learned from all of them. The Vakrians came, seeking their 165th victory. Instead, they provided the 164th lesson. The lesson that strength is not just about weapons and ships. It is about preparation, about patience, about knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget. Across known space, military planners from 100 civilizations studied the broadcast. They analyzed human weapons. They reassessed Earth's capabilities. They revised their estimates of human technology. And they all came to the same conclusion: do not threaten Earth. In the Council archives, the status of humanity was officially changed. They were no longer listed as primitive or developing. They were now classified as advanced hostile. It was a designation reserved for civilizations capable of defending themselves against any threat. But more importantly, Earth was also given a second classification, one that was rare in galactic history: Protected Protector. It meant Earth was not to be threatened. And it meant Earth would protect others who could not protect themselves. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with words of peace, not with gestures of friendship, with a demonstration of power so complete that no one would ever forget it. The Vakrian Empire slowly collapsed over the following years. Without their fleet, without their military might, they could not maintain control of their conquered territories. World after world declared independence. Species after species reclaimed their freedom. And on many of those worlds, human ships stood guard, not as occupiers, as defenders. Making sure the Vakrians never returned, Earth kept its promises. That, more than any weapon, was what changed the galaxy. Not the power to destroy, but the will to protect.